Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's been exactly 1 month since my last presidential prediction. So in today's video, I will be updating my prediction. Before we get started, please subscribe, like, and comment any suggestions and feedback in the section below. Now, before we get to my prediction, let's go over Joe Biden's current approval rating on DDHQ/The Hill. So currently he has a 39.4% approval rating, and he's disapproved of by 55.6%. And this has been pretty consistent since last month, but he has seen a slight decrease in the past couple of weeks. But generally, it's been pretty bad for him in terms of his likability and his approval rating. And a lot of presidents and incumbents will see some sort of boost leading up to their re-election bid, but Joe Biden just hasn't seen that just yet. It's still 6 months away, so it could happen anytime, but currently his approval rating still stands at pretty horrible 39%. Now for this video, I will be using 3 different polling aggregate websites, and all 3 of them, I mentioned them last video, and I will link that last video about Georgia in the top of your screen right now. In the national popular vote, currently Donald Trump holds a 1.2% lead over Joe Biden, with 46.1% of the vote to 44.9% on a two-way race. And if we expand this two-way race with Kennedy included, Trump is also ahead by 1.1%. So both candidates will lose, about the same on average. And if we want to take into consideration the other 2 candidates, Trump expands his lead to 2.7%. So a lot of these candidates over here that will be on most states' ballots and are going to take a lot more votes away from Biden than Trump. So anyways, let's get started on this prediction. We're going to begin with the safe states for both candidates, states that will go by 12 points or more. For Biden, we're going to have the West Coast, we're going to have Hawaii, Illinois, all these states up in the Northeast, New York, and Maine's 1st District. Now, a couple things to point out on New York and New Jersey. There's been a lot of polls, almost all polls in New York taken, even as recent as this last month, that show the race as somewhat competitive, a lot more competitive than this pretty heavy win back in 2020. Although I do not think it will be under 12 points. I think it'll definitely be a lot closer than it was in 2020 and 2016. And same thing with New Jersey. There actually, I think, was a poll that came out just recently that had Biden only up by like 6 or 7 as compared to what he won by 16% in 2020. And similar story, I think these 2 states, along with a lot of these other northeastern states, but mostly these 2 are going to get a lot closer in this election, more favorable towards Trump. And now for Trump's safe states, we're going to include Alaska in here. We're going to include a lot of the Mountain West, all of Nebraska except the 2nd District, a lot of the Deep South, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, and then Iowa and Ohio are also going to be in the safe column. These states have been trending very heavily towards the right. And, in 2020, both of them voted by around 8-9%, and the exact same margins in 2016. They didn't really change too much from the previous election, even though the nation as a whole trended left, and these states are pretty gone for Democrats going into the near future. Republicans hold a very strong base in these states, and I expect Trump to actually expand his lead in these 2 states, winning by just over 12 percentage points in both of them. We don't have too much polling in these states this cycle since they are so safe in Trump's column, but there was an average created for Ohio on 538, and Trump's up by around 10 percentage points. So this very much puts this in the safe column. And next we're going to get into the likely states, and these are the states that are going to go by 7 to 12 points for each candidate. Beginning with Biden's likely states, we're going to have Colorado, we're going to have New Mexico, and we're going to have New Hampshire up in the Northeast. Beginning with Colorado and New Mexico, once again, a lot of these safer states, there isn't much polling out of it. We do have a couple polls in Colorado that do suggest that it is going to be a closer race, especially some of the recent ones. And then this one here has Biden up by 10. So all in all, despite, Colorado continuing to trend left, in comparison to the nation, I expect it to bounce under the 12-point column. I think it'll still be pretty safe for Biden in the likely column, and same thing for New Mexico. But up in New Hampshire, this state's been very, very positive for Biden. in the polling this cycle. It's one of the states, one of the more competitive states that Biden has a very clear edge in. And, we can see that in some of the polls. His lead has shrunk to a 4-point lead, but a lot of these, polls have him up by, very comfortable amounts. And he had won in 2020 in the state by around 7 percentage points. Hillary Clinton only won by 1.5, so there's a lot of left-trending counties in this state. I expect the lead to stay around similar. Maybe this state could go under the likely column, but for now I'm going to keep at it almost exactly just over the likely column at 7 percentage points. And now for Trump's likely states, he's going to have two main likely states, Texas and Florida. Florida used to be considered one of the most competitive states in every single election, but after 2020 and 2022, where Trump actually increased his margin from 2016 when he had lost in most other states, and in 2022, the governor and the senators both won by 16 and 19 points respectively, cementing this state as a pretty solidly trending Republican state. And, there isn't too much polling, but some of the polling we do have suggests that Trump will win by up to 10 percentage points. And moving on to Texas, a similar story, except, this is a more left trending state from 2016 to 2020. But the reason why I keep it in likely is because of the Hispanic trends that I think saved Trump from really collapsing in Texas from a lot of these suburban trends up in Dallas and San Antonio and Austin. So a lot of these Hispanic trends back to the right are going to be very favorable for Trump and his chances at the presidency. And so same thing with the polls. Trump's up by 10% on average, which is actually higher than his 2016 win. I don't know if it's possible for him to win by more than his 2016 win, although I wouldn't be surprised if he won by a similar amount. So for now, I'm going to keep Texas in the likely margin. Moving on now to the lean states. Also, I forgot to mention that Maine's 2nd District is going to be safe for Trump. And since we're on Maine, we'll begin with Maine at large, in which Biden will win by a lean margin. And, there isn't too much polling out of Maine in general. But, the last poll that was taken on February 14th actually has Trump up 6 points in the state with a huge undecided population. And, this is a very elastic state. And I do expect Kennedy to receive a lot of third-party vote, which will tighten the margin a lot from 2020 when Biden had won the state by 9 percentage points. So due to that, I expect Maine to be a lot closer, and I think it'll be closer than New Hampshire this time around in the lean margin between 2 and 7 percentage points, probably closer being to like 3 to 4%, right in the middle. And, it's another lean state for Democrats is going to be the state of Virginia. Virginia has been a very left-trending state over the past decade. Joe Biden was able to carry the state by a little over 10 percentage points, and he made a lot of gains throughout basically everywhere in the state. But what really helped him a lot was the Nova region, where a lot of, people in Virginia live, as well as a lot of gains around Richmond and Virginia Beach. But this time around, after especially they elected a Republican governor, I still expect this state to be in the lean column between 2 to 7 percentage points, but I think it'll narrow up. The polls do have it a 1.1% lead for Biden right now, and that's extremely narrow from what he wanted by in 2020. And I do not expect Biden to end up winning by only 1.1%. And this poll over here that has Trump up by 1 is definitely an outlier. But these other polls are a lot more realistic. This lead by 5, 4, and 3, and 6. So all in all, I think Virginia is going to go into the lean state. Same thing with Minnesota. Much like Virginia, Minnesota trended very far to the left in the 2020 election from 2016. But Minnesota's trend to the left was mainly due to the Minneapolis suburbs, which helped Biden secure a 7-point win in the state. But same with Virginia, polls this time around only show Biden up by 3.4% based on a small sample of 9 polls. And on 538, there isn't an aggregate, but it's interesting to find that Trump actually leads in one of these polls. And if you include Stein, third-party candidates, Trump's up by 5, surprisingly. So we're going to continue to monitor the state, and hopefully there's going to be more polls released out of this state, but for now I'm keeping at a lean margin for Joe Biden. Moving on to the lean states for Donald Trump. First, we're going to begin with North Carolina. North Carolina is a pretty reliable state for Republicans. And in 2020, Trump was able to keep this state in his column, not losing too much support and then gaining some support in some of the northern regions and some of the southern regions. He had ended up winning by just over 1 percentage point, which is not too much worse than his 2016 margin. And if we look at the polls in North Carolina, currently Donald Trump is up by around 5.4 percentage points. And this isn't even close. Also taking into consideration that in 2020 and 2016, Hillary Clinton and both Joe Biden were pretty competitive according to the polls in the state. So I think this will be a lean state for Trump. Same thing for Georgia. Georgia's a very surprising one in that it's very left trending, and the Atlanta suburbs have been very, very favorable for Democrats, helping them win a few Senate elections and the presidential election by just under 12,000 votes. But same as North Carolina, the polls do not suggest this trend continuing. Trump is up 3.2% on average. And if you take Kennedy into consideration, his lead actually expands to 5.6%. And we're going to see a big trend along the rest of these Sunbelt states that Kennedy and third-party candidates end up affecting Joe Biden a lot more negative than Donald Trump. Now, moving on to the 5 most competitive states in the election, in my opinion. And first, let's just get Nebraska's 2nd district out of the way. I'm going to keep it right now as tilt in Democrats' column. There was a poll that came out recently that has Trump up around 3 in the district, but is left trending district. Biden won it by around 6 percentage points, if I remember. And I think Joe Biden will, lose some of his support, but I think he'll still keep the district as a whole. Moving down to the southwest corner of the United States, the state of Arizona right now, I believe, tilts in Donald Trump's column. Arizona is a state that narrowly went for Biden, one of the closest states, only voting for him by 11,000 votes. There wasn't too many trends towards the right or left. What really made the difference was Maricopa County trending only 5 points to the left. And the reason why this is significant is because Maricopa County holds a majority of the state's population. And a lot of these other counties don't matter as much. So usually wherever this county swings is where the state will end up going. And Arizona's been a very heavy left-trending state like Georgia, but also like Georgia, the polls look very good for Donald Trump. He leads by 5% on average, and it's been very consistent throughout the whole cycle. And if we move to the race with third parties, his lead stays the same. He's up 4.7% on average based on a considerable 20 polls taken. So this leaves Arizona in the tilt column. And similar story with Nevada. Nevada will also be in the tilt column for Donald Trump. And this will be the first time that Nevada has gone red since 2004 when Bush won his second term. The reason why I see this state as very favorable for Donald Trump this cycle is because of trends in Clark County. Similar to Arizona, there's one county that really determines where the state's going to go. And for Nevada, it is Clark County. Clark County holds the majority of the state's population. From 2016 to 2020, Trump actually improved by 1.4% on average. In 2022, the senator was almost beaten, but Republicans were able to flip the governorship in their favor. The polls in Nevada are pretty similar to Arizona. Trump has a 4.5% lead on average. And if we include third-party candidates, Trump has a 4.7% lead. So pretty similar. And on RCP, if we include all 5 candidates, Trump lead actually expands to 7.5%, which this would actually be in the likely margin for him. It's a very, very insane lead to even begin with. And we got to remember that Nevada usually tends to overestimate Republicans by a small amount, but they've never overestimated them by 7.5%. I think Nevada definitely leans in Trump's column right now, and I'll place it right now in the tilt column for Donald Trump. And the remaining 3 states, probably the most crucial states in the election, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, will decide the winner. Trump's at 268, Biden's at 226. Trump only needs to win one of these states, while Biden needs to win all 3 of them in order to clinch the election, gaining exactly 270 electoral votes. So let's begin with Wisconsin. Wisconsin is the most favorable state for Trump in this election. It's a state that he only lost by 20,000 votes. And it's a state that Democrats rely heavily on Dane County, especially, to be able to win this state. Biden ended up winning 75% of the vote in Dane County, where Madison is, and he ended up winning 69% of the vote in Milwaukee County. Biden needs considerable momentum and voters to come out in Dane County. And due to his extreme disapproval, I do not expect that Biden will receive this much turnout in Dane County. And the polls do show that a very tight race. This Quinnipiac poll is definitely an outlier, but Trump is still up by 0.5% on average. According to DDHQ, Trump's up by 3.1%. So we definitely have some disagreement among, one of the few states that we do see any disagreement in. But if we include our RFK, Trump's lead grows back to a 1.7% lead. I'm going to keep this state right now in the tilt column for Donald Trump. And I think it is the most likely state in the Rust Belt that he will flip out of these three crucial states in the Midwest. Moving over to Michigan, and he won Michigan by the most out of these three states by around 2 to 3 percentage points. I expect this state to be down to the wire, and the polls have been reflecting that. Joe Biden has been able to gain much of the support he has lost in the state. But as expected, Trump was never going to win this state by 4 to 5 percentage points. So this is definitely more realistic that some of the polls are portraying a more closer race. And similar story with DDHQ, where it has narrowed up. Trump's only up by 3.3% on average. And on 538, we can see, and Kennedy included, Trump leads by 1.1%, very, very narrow. And the lead has shrunken, which is good for Biden in the state. I think this state right now is going to be tilt in Trump's column. However, it'll be a narrow margin than in my previous election prediction, still barely in Trump's column. I think he'll win it by a similar amount to what he did in 2016, but we will continue to monitor this since we are still 6 months away, and a lot of things could change, which will shape up how these three states vote. And moving on to the last state, probably one of the most important states. It has 19 electoral votes, and Trump could only win Pennsylvania and Georgia and lose the rest of these competitive states, and he will still reach 270 electoral votes. In my previous prediction, I actually predicted that Pennsylvania would vote for Joe Biden narrowly, and there was some very favorable polling for Biden in Pennsylvania, and he had led the aggregate by a little bit. And a lot of his trends, and since he is from Pennsylvania, this definitely helps him. I think a lot of the trends in the suburbs of Philly will definitely help him at his chances in winning the state. But Trump has actually taken back the lead in Pennsylvania by a considerable amount, and Joe Biden's support has been dwindling quite significantly since my last prediction. And it's pretty surprising that every single poll that has come out from pretty reliable sources like CBS and Emerson and Bloomberg Morning Consult show that Trump is up by a narrow amount or that it's tied. And similar story when you include RFK, Trump's up by 1.6%. So this is the only change from my previous prediction. Trump will take back the state of Pennsylvania by a narrow amount, similar once again to his win in 2016. And this is the final map. Trump with 312 electoral votes, Biden with 226. Trump will flip Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment your suggestions in the comment section below. Thank you so much.